Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about downshifting and that you shouldn't do it. I had a comment from Christopher Kibler. He said that on snow and ice you needed to use the braking force from the engine, which actually is not true, because on skid pads they've done tests and show that if you lock up the back wheels on slippery conditions, you potentially could lose control of the vehicle. So when you're downshifting, you potentially could lock up the back wheels. The other question I asked you about downshifting is, why would you use a $15,000 drivetrain to save $400 brakes and downshift? And actually, I too was once of that habit, but some years ago somebody asked me that in a big truck why I was downshifting when I was just using fuel, because on a big truck you got to match rev. You got to rev the vehicle up to match the gear when you go down to the lower gear, and you're just using fuel. And I started to reconsider my approach to driving, and now I don't downshift at all. I simply just use the brakes. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go for a drive, show you how to drive a manual transmission without downshifting, because you don't need to downshift. Now, just let me clarify on one point. If you're going down long downgrades, yes, you do need to downshift, and you need the engine braking to assist in bringing that vehicle down the steep, long downgrade, especially if you're driving a bigger vehicle. You do need to do that. As well, racing, yes, they do downshift so they can shoot out of the corner because they're accelerating harder in a lower gear. We're not talking about either one of those things. We're not talking about braking on long downgrades, and we're not talking about downshifting for the purposes of racing and shooting out the corner on the other side. We're not talking about either one of those. We're simply talking about everyday driving. So stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, smart drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about downshifting, and that for most everyday driving you shouldn't do it, regardless of whether you're in a truck, car, light truck, motorcycle, or a bus. It's just a lot of work for nothing. And again, as I asked you in the introduction, why would you use a $15,000 drivetrain to save $400 brakes? In the event of a big truck, why would you use a $30,000 drivetrain to save $2,000 brakes? In terms of finances, it just doesn't make any sense. And at the end of the day, in a big truck, if you're downshifting every time that you're coming to a stop, you are going to be beat up and worn out. Just use the brakes. Unless you're going on a steep downgrade or you're racing, you don't need to downshift. And actually what we're going to do here today, we're going to go for a drive and just show you how to use the brakes and how to shift a manual transmission without downshifting, because especially on slippery conditions like today, you are probably going to risk losing control of the vehicle if you downshift. And I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who are bristling, and I had the same reaction when somebody said that to me, and I changed my driving so that I wasn't downshifting. And as well, the other thing that a lot of people are going to ask is, why do we teach students how to downshift for the purposes of a road test? The reason that we teach you to downshift for the purposes of a road test is to demonstrate that you have due care and control of the vehicle, that when you go around a corner, you're not going to stall and stop the vehicle because you can't find a gear. What downshifting teaches you for the purposes of a road test is which gear is appropriate for the speed that the vehicle is traveling. So therefore, if you go around a corner and you slow down to 20 kilometers an hour or 15 miles an hour, you know that the vehicle is probably either going to go into second gear or third gear, if you're depending on the gearing in the transmission. But most of the time, to go around a corner on a right-hand turn, you're going to shift down to second gear in a 5-speed transmission. In a big truck, you're probably going to shift down to fourth. And you need to know that, and you're going to learn that on the purposes of a road test. The other problem with that, however, is that when we teach students that, they think that they have to downshift all the time, when in fact you don't. One more point: why do we downshift, and why do we continue to downshift? We continue to downshift because in the 1940s, a long time ago, when Grandpa drove cars, the brakes were unreliable. So we downshifted to ensure that in fact we did come to a stop at the intersection. The problem with that is that we still continue to do it today, thinking that brakes are not reliable, when in fact brakes are reliable. If you open the cover off the master cylinder underneath in the engine compartment there, you'll notice that there's 2 chambers in there. The braking system on every vehicle, regardless of whether it's air brakes or whether it's hydraulic brakes, is divided into 2 independent subsystems. So if one braking system fails, the front brakes on your vehicle fail, the ones on the rear are still going to work, and you're going to come to a stop safely. And you got to change the brakes out anyway, so you might as well just use the brakes. And as well, on slippery conditions, you're going to have much more control if you just use the brakes as opposed to slowing down. So again, downshifting on everyday occurrences, don't do it. It's just a waste of time and it's a lot of energy for nothing. Use the brakes. But if you are going on a long, steep downgrade, and especially the bigger the vehicle, you're going to need that extra braking power from the engine. So we're going to go for a little drive here, just show you how I drive my 5-speed manual in the snow. And it is slippery today because it's around 0 and it's snowing, and we'll just give you some idea how to do this just using the brakes on a 5-speed transmission. So we're going to hook up the cameras, go for a drive. And you see there on the slippery conditions that as soon as I shift into second gear, it starts to grab and get traction. And the reason you're doing that is because you're not in a low gear that's going to spin the tires. When you spin the tires, you're going to lose traction. When you're in a taller gear, you got more torque and the wheels are actually getting traction. You can see here I just left it in third gear until the engine started to lug down. You can see that on the tachometer here. And I go around the corner nice and easy. And as soon as I shift into second gear, you can see on the tachometer that I'm shifting into second, and now I'm on third gear. And it's slippery conditions here because it's snow and ice, and actually school's not in today because we're on the Christmas holidays, so I don't have to slow down to 30. I only have to slow down to 50 kilometers an hour, and I'm just below 50. I got both hands on the steering wheel, keeping good control of the vehicle because I'm in the snow here. And I'm gonna make the left-hand turn here, and I'm going uphill here, so I can just use the hill to slow down. I just shift down to second gear, come around the corner, and you can see that the wheels are spinning in second gear, so as soon as I shift to third, it gets traction again. And again, I'm in third gear here. Just shift to second, come around the corner. I'm using the brakes to slow down because I have more control of the vehicle, and I get off here and the road is not plowed, and I put it back into third gear to get more traction. And again, I'm staying in near the center of the road because there's people out walking around shoveling their driveways and those types of things. I'm going slow. I'm going 40 kilometers an hour, less than 40 kilometers an hour, which for you in the States would be about 20 miles an hour. And I'm in third gear. And again, I just use the brakes right there, push the clutch in, come to a stop, and I shift out of third back to first gear. And I shift quite quickly into second because I'm going to get more traction, even with my steel-studded snow tires on the truck. And again, I got into second gear. No vehicles coming. And again, the rear end starts to kick around because the tires are spinning because I'm in second gear. Now I'm going to get up here and I'm going to get on a bit of a slippery part, and I'm going to show you that downshifting will potentially cause you to do damage to the drivetrain over a long period of time. It's not just one day it's all going to drop out. It's going to be incrementally that you're going to do undue damage to the drivetrain, and eventually what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up changing out the clutch, which any of you who've had to do a clutch job, you know that it's anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 to change out the clutch. You saw that it revved down quite a bit there on the tachometer. I just kept my foot on the throttle and it climbed back up by itself because it's in third gear, and the gearing in this Honda is actually quite low. And I just shift to fourth gear there. And actually I'm doing 50 kilometers an hour, and I'm going to show you how to do this, and you match rev. And I'm going to skip a gear. I'm actually going to go down to second here, and I'll show you this. See, match rev, you actually rev it up when you push the clutch in as well. And one of my pet peeves is over revving the engine, so there's really no need for you to have it in third gear here. And now I'm just kind of working the steering wheel to go around this corner on the slippery conditions here, and just keeping my foot off the throttle, and you can see it's revving up. I am using the engine braking to go down that hill a little bit. I'm not actually shifting down or shifting up And because you're on compromised conditions, you just want to gentle, easy, very subtle touches on the controls. And again, I'm just coming up here and braking. The vehicle's in third gear. There's nobody coming. Shift down to second and go around the corner slowly. Because in compromised conditions like this, when it's slippery, you don't want to brake and steer at the same time, and you especially don't want to be shifting gears when you go around the corner. You want to have the vehicle in the gear that you need to go around the corner before you start turning the steering wheels, because if you're trying to steer and shift and brake all at the same time, especially in the wintertime, as it is right now, you are probably going to end up going straight through the intersection. You are not going to come to a stop. And again, we're coming up here, we're just letting it idle down. It comes right down, and I'm in second gear, and I can just go around the corner. Actually, I'm in fourth gear. Now I shift to second. I screwed that one up. And again, on a manual transmission, the equation for fuel economy is the highest gear for the lowest rev. So the faster you can move through the gears when you're accelerating, the better fuel economy you're going to get, because you're going to be able to get into your tallest gear more quickly, and you're going to bring your revs down, and you're going to get better fuel mileage. You're going to get better fuel economy because the engine is not working as hard and it's going faster. So you want to try and move through the gears as quickly as possible. And that's regardless of whether you're driving a 5-speed, a 6-speed, or you're driving a 9, 10, 13, 18, 15 speed. It doesn't matter. That equation works for all manual transmissions. The highest gear for the lowest rev. It's that simple. And the faster you get through the gears, the better fuel economy you're going to get. And for those truck drivers and professional drivers watching this video, there are companies out there that do pay you a fuel bonus. So if you work through the gears faster, you're going to make more money because you're going to get that fuel bonus. And we all like making more money. So and again, I'm in fourth gear here, and I'm just coming up and using the brakes. Right there, you can see that it starts to lug down on the engine. As soon as it lugs down, that's when you push the clutch in and come to a stop. So I'm going downhill here. You can see I'm just using the brake, and I'm not changing any gears or pushing the clutch in. Now I'm going around the corner here, and I'm going to shift down to second gear because I'm slowing right down. And I go around the corner, nice and easy. Don't touch the clutch. And I'm in second gear, so I can let the RPM come down quite low. And actually I have to come to a stop here, so I push the clutch in. I'm stopped. I go back into first gear. And if you're taking a road test on a manual transmission, now this if you're taking a road test on a manual transmission, this may not be true in the UK. You are not required to downshift. You are required to show that you can shift down into a gear, a lower gear, to go around a corner, that you're not going to lose momentum or stall the vehicle. If you do that on a road test, then yes, that is going to either gain significant demerits or you're going to potentially fail your road test. But you are not required to downshift to slow the vehicle down for the purposes of a road test. Now, I may stand corrected on that in Europe. They may require you to downshift, but I'm not aware of that criteria for the purposes of a road test. They simply want to see that you can keep the vehicle moving. When you go around a corner, you can shift down to the appropriate gear so you're not going to stall the vehicle or bring the vehicle to a stop, because you want to be able to maintain forward momentum. And again, here the light has changed here. We see that, and I just slow down. And right now I push the clutch in just before I'm about to come to a stop. And then I shift from third back to first gear. And now again, we can see that all the cars are bunched up in front of us, which means that they're slowing down in preparation for that red light that you can see up in the distance there. And I'm just maintaining my gap in front of me between the vehicles and myself here in front of me. And I'm not downshifting. You can see that the RPMs are down quite low. There's no danger of the vehicle stalling. And if I just want to come to a stop, which I'm going to have to here momentarily, then I just work the throttle a little bit. And right now it's going to come to a stop. I push the clutch in, change down into second gear because I may or may not have to come to a complete stop, which I don't, and I just bring it into second gear, and actually now I'm going to go right back to first gear. Quick review of not downshifting. Historically, we downshifted because brakes were unreliable well into the 1960s. In the late 1960s, we implemented dual braking systems. If you look in the engine compartment directly here in front of the steering wheel, you'll find the master cylinder. If you take the lid off the master cylinder and look inside, you'll see two chambers in there. One is for the front and one is for the rear. Air brake systems are the same. They are a dual air brake system. So if one side fails, the other side will continue to work normally. Therefore, brakes will not fail. And since the 1960s, advances in technology and component parts that make up the braking system are much, much more reliable. And I would argue that in this day and age, brakes are not going to fail at all. They're almost 100% bulletproof. It is a very rare case that, in fact, braking systems do, in fact, fail. As well, we have such a large generation overlap that this driving technique of downshifting to save the brakes has been passed on from generation to generation, grandparents to parents to children, and sometimes that overlap is 10, 20, sometimes 30 or 40 years in really long cases. So this has been passed down from generation to generation, and we haven't revisited this, even though advances in technology, automotive technology, have improved and created braking systems that will not fail. As well, somehow it's become hooked into virility, mostly with men, but some virility with women as well. It's right up there with being able to drink copious amounts of alcohol, always getting the best deal when you go shopping, and sexual prowess with the opposite sex. Finally, not downshifting. Automatic transmissions, they don't downshift either. They just shift down to the next gear when it is the appropriate road speed to shift down. They don't really create a whole lot of engine braking in automatic transmissions. Therefore, because of that feature in automatic transmissions, all the engineers in the world can't be wrong in terms of downshifting. Finally, if you are downshifting and using the drivetrain to slow the vehicle, it's going to cost you a lot of money over time, because even if you match rev, you're never going to do it perfectly. And what happens is that the tires are spinning at a very fast speed, you rev the motor up, and you put these two things together, you're never going to get a perfect match on that. Unless you're a professional race car driver, you're never going to get a perfect match on that, and you're going to shock the drivetrain, and over a period of time, you're going to wear out the clutch and the other pieces. And again, I come back to my main point and my main argument. Why would you use a $15,000 drivetrain to save $400 brakes? It just doesn't make any sense financially. And even in a big truck, why would you use a $30,000 drivetrain to save $2,000 brakes? It doesn't make any sense. The other challenge with downshifting is that during preparation for road tests and driver education programs, we teach students how to downshift. And the reason that we teach them to downshift is because they have to demonstrate on a driving test that they have due care and control of the vehicle. When they go around the corner and they slow down, they have to pick an appropriate gear so they don't stall in traffic. As well, when they're going uphill in a big truck and the vehicle just cannot maintain that high gear, they have to downshift. Unfortunately, after their driver education program, they go on to think that they have to downshift all the time, when in fact they don't. We simply teach it for due care and control of the vehicle. So you don't have to downshift. Simply use the brakes. And now, again, I just reiterate, this is for everyday normal driving. Just come up to the stoplight or the stop sign or the intersection, wherever you're stopping, and just use the brakes. If you're downhill braking, yes, you do have to downshift, and you have to use the engine braking power to assist in getting that vehicle down the hill. Especially the larger the vehicle, the more you're going to have to use the engine braking power to assist. And if you're a professional race car driver, yes, you're going to downshift to shoot out of the corner and get more speed as you're coming out of the other side of the corner. But most of us are not race car drivers, and most of us are not doing large downhill braking, so we don't need the engine braking power. Even I was doing this well into my truck driving career until somebody said to me, oh, you don't need to downshift, you're just using fuel. And they were referring to a big truck, because you got to throttle up to downshift to get the gears to synchronize. And when you're match revving, again, you're throttling up to downshift, so you're just using extra fuel. So if you just use the brakes, again, you're going to get better fuel economy. When you get better fuel economy, you can put that saved money towards doing a brake job every 2 or 3 years in your vehicle. So don't downshift. Question for my smart drivers: do you still continue to downshift, Why do you still continue to downshift? Do you find my argument convincing? Leave a comment down in the comment section there. All of that helps out the new drivers learning how to drive after they get their license. I'm Rick with Smart Drive Test. Thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see here, share, subscribe, leave a comment down in the comment section. As well, hit that thumbs up button. Check out all the videos here on the channel if you're working towards a license or starting a career as a truck or bus driver. Lots of great information here. As well, head over to my website, more great information and online courses that you can purchase. Stick around to the end of the video, funny bits, and links to the other videos and to my website. Thanks again for watching. Good luck on your road test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.